This has been said many times that the best time to buy a game is not when it first comes out. It's a year or two later when they come out with a definitive edition that not only has all of the content, like the season pass, all that DLC thrown in, but it's also cleaned up of bugs. It's had 2 years of ultimately bug testing from those people that shelled out the original $60, $70 to get the game back at launch. In a way, it kind of feels like those original buyers were beta testers that paid a premium for it. Nowhere does this seem to ring more true than with the Avengers game, like the Square Enix Avengers game that came out a couple years ago that's now actually being shut down in September. Like, there's going to be no new content for it. It's being delisted, though you can still play it online to some degree, which for a live service game really surprised me that they were able to set that up, and it gives me hope that other live service games will see this sort of support when, they're reaching their sunset time like the Avengers game is. Now, the Avengers was notorious for having a ton of paid DLC in the way of cosmetics, and oftentimes, the different items that you would equip to your characters wouldn't actually show up. It would just be the cosmetic skin that you oftentimes had to pay money for, get out of some kind of loot box, something like that. I just got the game. I haven't played it to the extent that other people have. And that was something that people were upset about. They just wanted all the content ultimately in the game off the bat. I mean, you're thinking this is the Avengers superhero game. You would assume it'd be a single player one. It's not. It's this online focused game that's got live service elements to it in a large degree. It wasn't the game that people wanted. But you could argue that the Avengers Definitive Edition game that I picked up for $6 because it's going to be delisted in a few months is the game that people would have wanted to begin with. And kind of is hard to believe because why didn't they just release the game in this state a couple years ago? Would have sold better? I guess their research, their numbers probably indicate otherwise. That's why they made it be the kind of live service game that it became, and now they're just trying to make a few bucks off it before they take it off the online digital stores forever, so they're selling it for $6, and ultimately, many of these cosmetics that are thrown in individually weren't even $6 years ago. It kind of makes me feel like the people who bought the thing when it was actually current were some real suckers. And yeah, I know there's an online, community aspect around it that's going to be stronger when the game is new, but I like to be able to take the games at my own pace. These campaigns in this game were not accessible offline until now. They took what was previously online only content that required an internet connection to play, and they made it be accessible even without an internet connection to play. And for a game that I feel like was torn apart by critics over its entire lifespan because of these, paid aspects to it, the online requirements, the fact that they went out of their way to do this now, I think is a sign of goodwill from the developers. I think it says that the development team really cared about this game, and maybe there was, some serious influence from corporate overlords, which I think people have probably assumed the entire time, but it really gives me some hope for some other titles. Like a game that I was interested in, Riders Republic, has been routinely on sale for about $15. Maybe it'll get a little bit less, if I give it a little bit more time. Maybe it'll get closer to $9 or $10 like The Crew 2 was, another Ubisoft game in a similar fashion. I just can't really pull myself to buy a game like Riders Republic that I'm not going to maybe play immediately and know that it's a live service, online required game, and think, if I don't get around to playing that for a couple of years, the game might be dead, the game might be offline, the game might be completely unplayable. I have no idea. It really discourages me from buying these live service games. Even the Division 2, which was a game that when I was playing it, I was really into the Division 2. And ultimately, I sold it back when the game was actually worth some money and it wasn't like $5 at GameStop like it is today. I sold it because I was like, it's just hard to invest time into a game that ultimately is going to one day, unless it goes the way of the Avengers, become unplayable. It's not going to have an offline mode because it doesn't have an offline mode right now. So if the servers are taken down, if Ubisoft discontinues it, it's going to be an unplayable game that I can never go back to. And it's hard for me to invest time into a game that I can't go back to. So I really applaud the Avengers developers for that. Now, I've been on the r/PatientGamer subreddit for quite some time, but it's really kind of hit me harder as I've gotten older that I'm very disinterested in spending more than $10 on a game, is what I was telling my buddy. If it's more than $10, it's a tough sell for me. I want my games less than $10, a few years old, and all the content in one, or I'm just buying the base game. I don't like the kind of parting it out. I don't like having part of the DLC because then it makes me feel like I'd like to have the rest of the DLC. Another good example of this is NBA 2K23 that I recently picked up on sale. I maybe bought like 2K19 for practically for free, like after a $5 GameStop coupon once a couple years ago. I've never owned any basketball games. Never been a big thing because I don't watch basketball. I've always been a football guy, a Madden guy, because the only NFL game in town. But I know how these sports games work, right? As the year goes on, they progressively get cheaper. They reach their bottomed out price. For Madden lately, that seemed like $20. Like, it won't seem like it goes cheaper than $20 anymore unless you get a used copy at GameStop. But the NBA game will still get like as low as $6. Now, it's disappointing that NBA 2K has a My Career mode that's loaded with microtransactions and ultimately will become completely unplayable when the game is inevitably taken offline in about a year and a half, because that seems like how much longer it has left based on historical practices of 2K. So you have a My Career mode that will become unplayable, but you have the franchise mode, the My NBA mode, very playable for a long time. And that's why I'm not, investing any time into playing the My Player mode, because I know eventually it will become unplayable. Like, it already has a predetermined expiration date. But the My NBA mode is completely playable offline, so that's something that I know I can revisit for years and years to come. In fact, 2K23 did something really cool this year where they gave you access to playing historical teams in like a historical NBA. Like, you can truly start in the 1980s and play up to today using some of the real players, and there are plenty of generated players in there as well. But for somebody who's not like an obsessively NBA fan, doesn't know all the players from back then, like me, that's not a big deal to have some auto-generated players in there. I know Jordan, I know Magic, I know stuff like that, and they're in the game. In fact, the broadcast looks like a broadcast from the era. I mean, they add different things. Other teams came into the NBA between now and the 1980s, obviously. You see them get added. You see the rules change as the years go by. You see the transactions of just things kind of evolving in the way that it actually did evolve in the NBA, and you have the opportunity to make changes to that and, change history. It's a really cool franchise mode. It's by far better than anything that was put out football-wise. So it's really enjoyable, and I picked it up for $6. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't have spent $60-70 on a basketball game, but if I did, with this one mode that's playable for the long term, I feel like it'd be worthwhile. This is a good definitive basketball game to have, in the sense that it has a great My NBA mode and features that I think make this game be playable for hundreds of hours in an offline sense. So that's my take. Like, I want the final game. I want the game that's, really not getting any more patches. I want the game that has all the content there. I want to know exactly that this is what the game is going to be in 5 years, 10 years if I go and revisit it, because it's kind of reached a state where it's not evolving anymore. It's just set. This is the game. And that used to be the game that you took out of the case back on the PlayStation 2, because they couldn't add any content, add any patches to it later. But today, if you want to get that type of experience, you got to buy the game the tail end, like I've been doing a lot lately. Thank you guys for watching. I'm Bailey, and I will see you in the next video.